The situation in the direction of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk is escalating. According to the defense forces, the enemy is trying to infiltrate as deeply as possible between our soldiers' positions there and get closer to Drushkivka, which is only 18 kilometers from Kramatorsk. In addition, it is expanding the drone strike zone. Consequently, movement from Kramatorsk to Drushkivka is already under threat due to the activity of enemy strike drones. Frontline analysts are already predicting that the occupiers' autumn campaign will be aimed at capturing the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration, and the occupiers are preparing the necessary forces for this. Over the past day, the General Staff recorded 24 attacks in this direction. The front near Dobropillia is even more active. The situation here is becoming more complicated. This is the Pokrovsk direction. The occupiers are trying to infiltrate the city itself, and their hostile drones are reaching the center of Dobropillia, which significantly complicates the defense of the armed forces of Ukraine. In addition, the Russians are trying to storm the village of Dobropillia of the same name, which is also on the approaches to the city. This became possible for them due to the capture of the neighboring towns of Rudinsk and Reishain. The General Staff records the highest number of attacks per day specifically in the Pokrovsk direction. Our defenders stopped 36 enemy assaults. Explosions are traditionally spreading across Russia. This time they reached Kotovsk in the Tambov region. This is 1,000 kilometers away from Kyiv. After another drone attack, a massive fire broke out at one of the key wild berries logistics centers in central Russia. It, according to monitoring channels, engulfed over 100,000 square meters of the logistics center. That is like 14 football fields put together. The Russian city of Kotovsk is also shrouded in smoke and burning so intensely that local authorities have urged residents to limit their movement around the city for 2 days. The night was restless across the territory of Ukraine. The evening before, the enemy struck the Poltava region with ballistic missiles, as reported by monitoring channels. In the morning, the Air Force summarized that the Russians had launched 162 strike drones at the territory of Ukraine, 134 of which were shot down or suppressed. The occupiers launched the drones, as is now traditional, from Kursk, Orel, Primorsko-Akhtarsk, and from the temporarily occupied territories in Crimea and the Donetsk region. According to the Air Force, hits were recorded at 18 locations, as well as debris falling at 3 others. The Russians killed a child and her mother and wounded 14 other people in the Chernihiv region. At dawn, they attacked the regional center with drones. A 4-year-old girl and her 39-year-old mother died in a burning house. The woman's older daughter, who is 14, was taken to the hospital in moderate condition. 13 more people were injured in the city and the district the day before, including 2 children. Sloviansk is suffering from enemy attacks. This is the Donetsk region. There is 1 victim and 5 wounded there. In the city, more than 24 private homes and 17 high-rise buildings have been destroyed. The aftermath of the massive bombing is also being dealt with in Kramatorsk. The number of casualties has already risen to 26. Among them is a 2-month-old baby. The Russians dropped 9 aerial bombs on the city, 7 of which fell on the residential buildings. There are also casualties in Drushkivka and Oleksandrivka. In Slatine, in the Kharkiv region, an enemy FPV drone took the lives of 2 men who were cleaning the street after a previous strike. Izium was under fire from multiple launch rocket systems. There are 14 injured, including 2 children. About 100 homes were destroyed or damaged. In Kharkiv, 5 residents needed medical assistance after a strike by a jet-powered drone. In Kherson, a large-scale fire broke out after a night drone attack. Retail outlets burned down. Over the past day, 12 civilians were injured in the region, and 1 man did not survive. More than a dozen apartment buildings and private houses, a cell tower, and vehicles were damaged. 2 women were wounded in the Dnipropetrovsk region. They are residents of Nikopol and Pavlograd. Explosions damaged a market, apartment buildings, an agricultural enterprise, retail pavilions, and trucks. An emergency situation occurred in the village of Peshchanka in the Dnipropetrovsk region. The inspection of the territories and demining are still ongoing. The day before, explosions were heard there and a major fire broke out. Residents were urgently evacuated. 1 person died and 11 others were wounded. 3 private houses were destroyed and 15 more were damaged. The head of the regional military administration called this a war crime scene, but the causes have not yet been officially announced. An investigation is underway. An energy worker was wounded, and 6 regions are partially without electricity due to Russian shelling. This is reported by the Ministry of Energy. Electricity is partially unavailable in the Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, and Sumy regions. Wherever the security situation allows, restoration work is ongoing, the Ministry of Energy says. There are no plans to restrict electricity supply today, but they are asking to shift active energy consumption to daytime hours. And what is the situation with electricity in your city? Be sure to write about it in the comments. And of course, like the video and subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, I am continuing the TSN broadcast. Secretly and without official confirmation, the CIA director visited Moscow for the first time in 5 years. There was no official warning about his visit from either the Kremlin or Washington. Instead, it is known that the US asked Ukraine not to strike Moscow during the period when the high-ranking American official would be visiting Russia. Who the CIA director met with and what issues he raised is also not known for certain. The visit is connected to contacts between the special services of the Russian Federation and the USA. This is how Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov commented on the guest's arrival. Although at first he lied altogether, stating to the press that the Kremlin had no information about an American military plane that had arrived at Moscow's Vnukovo International Airport and that the Russian side did not plan to meet with representatives of the US administration this week. However, the meeting did take place after all. The Wall Street Journal suggests that the focus of the discussion was on issues of future mobilization in Russia and their cooperation with Iran. And they talked about this against the backdrop of a pause in negotiations between Russia and Ukraine mediated by Washington. On the same day, the Vatican's top diplomat, who also arrived in Moscow for the first time in the last 5 years, tried to convince the Kremlin to end the war and sit down at the negotiating table. There he met with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov. The diplomats discussed ways to achieve peace in Ukraine and supposedly agreed to cooperate on humanitarian issues, specifically to help children who have suffered from the aggression. Lavrov supposedly agreed to this. However, regarding the end of the war, he once again repeated his narrative about the need to eliminate its root causes. The Pope has repeatedly called on the parties to sit down at the negotiating table, and the Vatican was considered a potentially possible venue for the meeting. However, every time, all peace efforts have run up against Russia's impossible demands, which effectively mean the capitulation of Ukraine. A wounded roe deer was rescued by patrol officers from 2 different regions at once. A passerby in Vinnytsia noticed the roe deer with a broken leg, which was crying out in pain on the side of the road, and called the police. The patrol officers wrapped the exhausted animal in a thermal blanket and transported it in their service vehicle to their colleagues in the Khmelnytsky region. A wildlife rescue center operates there. Veterinarians have already provided care to the injured find. Careful with the legs there, because the leg is battered, the leg is broken. Well, it's broken. Compassion knows no regional boundaries. Take care of yourselves and those around you. I'll leave it at that for this episode, but the TSN team continues to work to keep you informed of the most important news. So, see you in the next episode at 2:00 p.m. Don't miss it.